Hello there, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son sit down and talk about fantasy, sci fi, and all other sorts of fiction that we enjoy together. I'm Jim, I'm the father of this show, and there is no Zachary here today. This is one of our Just Jim episodes as I continue on in a review series on the Dresden Files. Today, we'll be taking a look at our 13th book in the series, Ghost Story. And what a great book it is. Before we hit the content, let me just remind you that we've got all sorts of content on this channel. So take a look around, check out our Wheel of Time content, our other various series that we put out there, things Zach and I have done, as well as things I have other guests on for. And if you're liking it, be sure to subscribe so that you'll hear every time we post something new. We've got 1 to 2 episodes dropping every week, and we intend to keep the content coming. We also enjoy connecting with anybody who listens to our content and also enjoys fantasy and sci-fi. So you can find links in the show notes, and even if you're listening on the audio podcast, you'll find the show notes there that have how you can find us on Discord, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and even an email. So if you want to email us, nobody ever does that, but you are welcome to do so. And we'll respond. All right. Well, I don't have much for notes today because that's usually something I'll banter with Zach about, and I've got no one to banter with. So I will just tell you what I'm drinking today because it's not a recording if we're not drinking something. And I have just a nice rosé today. This is a rosé of Pinot Noir. Now, if you haven't tried a rosé of Pinot Noir, it can be a little darker and duskier than a typical rosé because a Pinot Noir is a very dark grape. I live in suburban Portland, Oregon. I'm actually on the Washington side of that. We've got great wine all over the place, but Oregon in particular is known for its Pinot Noir, and you can find a rosé then just by finding some grapes that some wine that they pulled the grape skins out a little sooner, and that's how you get the light stuff. It's a tasty one, and we're still in our hot summer months. A nice chilled rosé is a good thing to do as I'm recording a podcast. So let's talk about Ghost Story. A little spoiler clarification for you. I am going to fully spoil this book, and I'm free to mention anything from books 1 through 12, but I will not spoil what's coming up. I might reference things in a spoiler light way, just some hints, suggestions of what's to come, but I'm not going to ruin it for you for those other books. So if you're watching these as you read through the series, you are safe here as long as you've read Ghost Story. If not, go read Ghost Story, then come back. I will still be here. All right, you've been warned. So let me dig into my initial thoughts on the series. This book and where it fits. Changes was the one right before this, and that was a significant upheaval in what we knew and what comes next in the Dresden Files storyline. And it ended with a massive cliffhanger. Harry Dresden's apparent murder. When someone is shot through the chest from a distance by a sniper, high-powered caliber rifle, then falls overboard and sinks to the depths of Lake Michigan. He's dead, right? That's kind of how it works. Well, then you roll into another book and it's called Ghost Story. Kind of makes sense. Harry died. We want more Harry. Let's talk to his ghost. Now, Ghost Story presents another real shift in what we'd been used to in the Dresden Files. So really, we kind of had books 1 through 11 that we got used to a certain way the books would be laid out, the plot, the storyline would come along. Changes was a little different. Ghost Story is still even more different. The pacing of the book differs from what we'd seen before. You're sometimes going, what is going on here? Because It does a nice job. Jim Butcher does a nice job of giving Harry's sense of disconnection and disjointedness because of his predicament in this story. So he's very intentional on how he wrote this book, and I think it delivers. I will also say when I first read this, it left me going sometimes, what is going on? I don't understand. It benefited from a reread, to be honest. And again, I think the author wanted us to be a little lost because Harry is a little lost at times. So we'll talk about that more as we go into this. But I'll also say another feeling that Jim Butcher got out of me from this is as I'm seeing what's happening to the various characters, I'm literally saying, no, I don't want that. You're messing with my characters. And it was a necessary thing. And honestly, a brilliant device Jim Butcher implemented to progress the meta narrative of the Dresden Files in this book. Uh, wow. I mean, things have changed in ways they could not have changed easily another way. And partly it was because Harry is removed from the picture for a while and then comes back. Let's talk about that as we dig into the plot points of the story. Now, I was pretty happy with how it worked in changes that I said, okay, book 12, I'm going to focus on 12 key points. This is book 13. I'm going to do the same thing. 13 key points and revelations from this book. Here's what we got. Number one, Harry finds himself, as the book opens, in a strange place. It's somewhere in between life and the afterlife. And oddly, it looks a lot like Chicago. And he meets very promptly Carmichael. Now, we knew Carmichael all the way back in book 2, Full Moon. Carmichael is killed by the Loup Garou. So, Carmichael had been part of the Chicago Police Department, Special Investigations. He was Sergeant Murphy, Lieutenant Murphy's partner. She's Sergeant Murphy and then not anything Murphy, but that's a different story. But back then, he was Murphy's partner. He was one of the good guys, and we saw him killed. But ta-da, here he is. This is kind of a clue for Harry. I don't think I'm in Kansas anymore. Carmichael invites him along with him to the police precinct. And here we see officers on the job. What kind of job? A little different than you might expect. They are here investigating irregularities, checking out the things that aren't quite working out the way they should, and helping resolve issues for people who have died so they can move on. Yep, Harry, you died. You're here because you were shot. And who's in charge of this special unit? Jack Murphy. Yep, Murphy. But not Karen Murphy. It's Jack Murphy. That was her father, who we know is also dead already by the time we come along to meet Murphy in the Dresden Files. But he had worked for the police department, and here he is. In fact, he ran what was then the version of Special Investigations. Now, Harry's going to have a meeting with Captain Murphy, and he's going to learn, okay, why are you here? What's going on? Okay, you were shot. Yep, you're dead. But something irregular happened. Things didn't go the way they were supposed to. And so you're being given a chance to investigate. See, somebody broke the rules of how things were supposed to go with your life, and therefore you were murdered. So, what we're going to give you a chance to do because of this irregularity is, and you don't have to do this, but we're going to offer it to you to go back and solve your murder. Investigate the mystery. But it's not really that easy. I mean, you're not just going to go back in your body. He's told your body is not available. Okay. So, how will I go back? Well, you'll be a spirit. You'll be a ghost, Harry. Okay. With all the limitations that come upon ghosts, and we're going to explore those as we go through this story. But one of them he's warned of is, for example, when the sun comes up, you better not be. You, that will not be good for you. And he said, you're given this challenge. Now, if you go back, there's a real risk because you could say, nah, I'm not going to go back. I'm just going to move on. To what? Well, we don't know. You could go to heaven, you could go to hell. I mean, you'll be judged, Harry. So whatever happens, happens. You can just take your chances and go on with that. Or you can do this other thing first. And if you solve your murder, then things will work out and you'll be able to then go on. But if you go back and you don't solve your murder, if this mystery just is left hanging, you will be too. You won't have a path back here. You'll be left as a ghost forever. Eh. Now, this is like, okay, pearly gates, maybe a ghost forever. Why? Why would I do that? I mean, it's a viable question, Harry Dresden, and he learns there is motivation because people he cares about are going to suffer greatly if this murder is not resolved. Three of them, in fact. He's not told which three, but three people's future suffering is at risk, is on the line. If he doesn't want them to be absolutely miserable, maybe in horrible danger, he'll want to go do this. Well, this is Harry Dresden. We know how he rolls. He is always going to put the needs of his friends, of those he cares for, ahead of himself. Heck, he'll do that for people he doesn't even know. So, yeah, no brainer. He doesn't think on this very long. So, okay, he's got the challenge. Find out who murdered him. Extra challenge, he'll be a spirit only, with all the restrictions of ghosts. An extra challenge, if he fails, he's stuck there forever. That sets the stage for this book. So let's move to our second point, because of course Harry said, yes, let's do it. So he's returned. First stop, he goes to Mortimer Lindquist. Why? Well, that's the ectomancer we've met previously. Morty can see and speak to spirits. When we first met him, he was using that to bilk people of their money, partly scamming people, but he really does have this ability. And Harry knew it. So here he goes. I'm going to go to somebody that will actually hear me because I'm going to need to communicate with other people. I'll start with the one I know I can get through to and see if I can get him to help. Going to Morty, he discovers time has passed. This isn't the day he fell overboard being shot through the chest. 6 months later is what he's at now. He did not expect that. So now his mind's going, okay, so what's changed? What else am I going to have to deal with after 6 months? Huh. Going to explore, meeting with Morty, he sees the place looks different than it used to. The house seems to be cleaned up. He used to have all sorts of corny, tombstones and stuff sticking up on his lawn. Not anymore. Nope. Now he seems like to be a proper person. Maybe he's not the charlatan anymore. But it's not as easy for Harry as just walking into the house saying, Mortimer, I'm here, help me out. He's got to get past the guard. He finds a ghost, a spirit, a shade, protecting Morty's house. Captain Sir Stuart Winchester of the Colonial Marines, with rifle and all. Why? We're going to learn more about that in a moment. But specifically, we learn from Stu, and we see it in action. Yeah, Stuart, I'm just call him Stu. That's what Harry does. He's there protecting the house from wraiths. What's a wraith? Well, they're these ghosts that have been attacking, and they, like all ghosts, are made of memories of what they once were. Okay, that's what a ghost is. A ghost isn't really the person anymore. It's the memories of that person that are still hanging around for some reason. So they're made of memories. That's where they hold on to their being by remembering who they are or were. But a wraith is one that has been around so long or for whatever circumstance has given up on trying to hold on to its essence. It's in despair. And a wraith just becomes a creature. And these wraiths are being used by some other creatures to attack Mortimer's house. And Stu tries to fight them off. So Harry gets to see that in action, goes, "Oh, that's not so good." So I'm not with them. Can you let me in? Because Harry can't just walk in the house. Door is closed. And ghosts can't walk into houses that have a threshold. Well, we've learned about a threshold in previous books. It's a magical protection that just naturally exists when somebody is in a home. And yeah, he just can't walk right in. It's like a solid wall then. Normally, he's going to find out, yes, I can walk through walls. That's kind of a cool perk of being a ghost, but not through a threshold. However, Stu, it turns out, is actual family. He's a long, long, long time ago ancestor of Mortimer. So he is actually able to go through the threshold and he's able to welcome Harry in as part of the family. So they get inside, and now Harry is going to have a chance to talk to Morty. Except Morty doesn't want to talk to him. Oh, he sees him. He hears him. He's like, no. Dresden, no. Every time you show up, it means trouble. I want nothing to do with you. I'm not helping you." And he goes into his bedroom and slams the door. Now we're inside now, so Harry can just follow. And Stu's like, "No, don't." And bam, walks right into the door. He can't pass through. It's been magically protected. There are ways you can do that Harry's quite familiar with and did not think about the fact that Morty would be too. He's made it so ghosts can't go into his room unless, he opens the door. So he can shout at him, he can talk through the door, but he can't go to him. Frustrating. How to get Morty to help. That's what Harry's got to figure out. And Mortimer doesn't want to talk about it, but then something else happens that moves it along because the house is attacked again by a bunch of wraiths. And this time there are also lamers, these creatures that are other kinds of spirits, but seem to be a little more uber powered. And they are like cattle drivers. They are moving the wraiths to attack as desired because the wraiths are otherwise kind of mindless. So Stu goes on the attack. He also calls up other spirits that are here in the house that Mortimer has collected here, and they all try to help with the defense of the house. And Harry does too, and he tries to zap some of these ghosts and discovers I got no magic. That's not something he was counting on. I mean, he's a wizard. Wizards do magic. No, you're not a wizard. You're the ghost of a wizard, a shade of a wizard. You don't have your magical abilities. That's a blow. Regardless, they do manage to chase off, deal with these wraiths, overcome, and they even in the midst of that are back outside, Stu and Harry going up against the big bad who's been hovering in the background, but then takes an active part late. Someone Harry refers to as the gray ghost. He's just covered in a completely gray cloak. He or she, you can't even tell what it might be. But this gray ghost seems to have some more power. And Harry discovers the gray ghost can use magic. Wait a second. I just learned ghosts can't use magic. He's using magic. She's using magic. Whatever she is. The gray ghost is magicking. Okay, so there must be a way, and Harry has to learn it. But there are a lot of things Harry has to learn. I mean, Sir Stu is shooting ghosts. How do you shoot a gun when you're a ghost? Well, he's got to learn that, and he's going to as we get forward. But he's learning something else right now, something totally different. And that is as Harry is walloping on the gray ghost because he can contact another ghost, it turns out, the gray ghost cries out for help and another being shows up with a blue skull, flickering blue flame eyes. Harry's like, that looks like Bob's skull, but it's blue and it's not Bob. It doesn't react to, "Oh, hey Harry, how you doing?" No, it comes to the help of the gray ghost, and Stu and Harry still manage to chase them off. They just get away. Good. But as they're trying to deal with them and running them off, they do see an actual person going into Morty's house. Now, this is a problem. Stu shoots the guy, and that's how discovers, oh, that's not another spirit. That's a real person, because it does nothing. When he shoots his gun, it's still just spirit stuff, and it's actually empowered by memories. That's what makes up ghosts. And the only thing they can do is with those memories. So when he shoots a bullet, it's a memory he's shooting, and he'll look to reclaim it later. Because if a ghost loses too many of its memories, that's how it'll end up turning into a wraith, or at least another way. It just loses itself. So we've got to get there and stop this guy. And so they rush back to the house. Well, they physically can't stop the guy, but Mort can. He's a guy. And here we get something interesting. We discover that Harry can actually enter into a person if he's invited in. Harry is sucked into Mortimer, and Mortimer is able to use Harry, or Harry is able to use Mortimer, one way or the other, or maybe it's the same, to cast a protective spell. He defends himself from this guy, and then Mortimer kicks him out. "I didn't want you to stay. I just needed that." He uses other spirits to do their thing against this guy, and the guy ends up running off. They overcome. But okay, this was a coordinated attack. That's no coincidence. This guy comes here telling him, "You have been summoned. I need to take you to my master." Okay, spiritual attack, physical attack. They're trying to abduct Mort. So, it might be in Mortimer's uh, advantage, to his advantage, to perhaps stick around with Harry. Harry needs his help. Well, maybe Harry can help Morty too, because there's something going on. This gray ghost character must want Mortimer. But maybe we can work together and it might help us all. So that's what point 2 resolves with. Now you've got a team. Now you've got Mort committed to help Harry, for Harry, but also for Mort. And so Mortimer is going to drive Harry over to Murphy's house. That's the next move. This is point 3. And Stu rides along. He doesn't have to stay at the house. He can travel along with Mortimer. Once there, they see a really expensive car parked right out in front of Murphy's place. Murphy's not going to own a car like that. So Mort's going to hang back, let the ghosts go check this out, see what's going on. Now, they can't go in, again, threshold, but they can go look in the windows. Nobody can see them. They're invisible. So they go and they look in the windows. They're listening, seeing what they can discover. Inside, they find Mr. Childs, who turns out to be one of the guys, a fixer for gentleman, Johnny Marcone. And through a conversation they're hearing, Harry's able to pick up that Murphy has been, in some manner, now collaborating with Marcone for the good of Chicago. I mean, Harry's gone, and she apparently has been trying to do what she can to mitigate the damage of there being no Harry Dresden anymore. And apparently part of that has been cooperatively working with Marcone. Not working for Marcone, but working with Marcone. As that gets done and Childs leaves, Harry gets to learn that there's much more going on to this working to take care of Chicago. And he discovers an alliance, a grand group of people who Harry had touched over the course of the books, changed their lives, and now they've all rallied together to keep up the fight. So, who? Okay, well, there's representatives of these various groups that all show up at Murphy's house for a meeting. You got Will Borden and Marcy, another one of the alphas, those werewolves. They're here. You've got Daniel Carpenter, Molly's younger brother, turning into a pretty big guy here. He's represented. We've got Father Forthill from the Church of St. Mary's, who's here. We've got a few others he's going to come to learn are part of this, but one that's mentioned and isn't here right away yet is the Ragged Lady. Now, he'd heard about the Ragged Lady in the conversation with Mr. Childs too, and it's going to turn out the Ragged Lady, who is scaring people all over the city, is actually Molly Carpenter. And this is a persona she's adopted after her return from Chichen Itza 6 months ago. If you remember, at the end of Changes, she'd been injured in that battle, but, not fatally, but was clearly going to need to be cared for. And it looks like maybe she was injured more than physically. She may have been mentally screwed up by the experience. We did know she's a sensitive. She has some empathic abilities, and all that happened up there and all the death may have changed Molly in some serious ways. And this group that gathers, they're partly worried about her. Because she doesn't act normal anymore, and she kind of keeps to herself, though they can sometimes get her to these meetings. Oh, one more group that's represented here I hadn't mentioned yet is the Paranetters. Now, that's a bunch of low-level magic users that Harry had gathered together in a previous book for their own protection and built this network all over the country. So the ones here in Chicago are represented by Abby. I think that's her name. I didn't put that in my note right here, but I think it's Abby that's here. And it's one of the ones he had personally helped out in a previous book. While he's watching this meeting and hearing them talking about the things, the challenges that are going on, they have a guest at the meeting. One of the wraiths. See, the White Court vampires are still around, but they have been teaming up with this alliance from time to time for their mutual benefit. Now that tells you how serious some of the things may be, because, well, Harry Dresden would interact with the White Court vampires, but in general, not the other people. They're vampires, that's like, but no. A representative, Felicia Wraith, attends this meeting and gives them some information, but also drops a threat. See, she has discovered that they possess two of the knights, two of the swords of the Knights of the Cross. Harry had those in his custody until he was going to find someone to give them to, and then Harry died. So Murphy has taken over protecting those swords. And Felicia's revealing, I know you have them. And, I might need to do something about that. And so she says, I might be willing to talk about it. We can maybe work something out. Maybe, woman to woman, she says to Murphy. So the two of them exit the room privately. And this White Court vampire, she makes some demands. She also makes a proposition. She's kind of interested, perhaps, in a little little feeding time on Murphy. They do feed on emotion and especially sexual feeling and emotion. So she's like making some moves here, and Murphy plays along for just a moment, and then she takes this vampire tramp out. Wham! Um, Butts her with her pistol whip. That's the word I want. Um, Kicks her while she's down, uh, basically threatens to shoot her right in the head. The whole scenario simply lays out the fact that Murphy is still a badass and do not mess with me. And that's what she basically tells the White Court vampire: you will leave now or I will kill you. And I better not hear any more about these swords. All right. So Harry's like, wow, she's in charge. All right. Now, as he continues to listen, we learn that all of this is really being generated. Even the need for the White Court vampires to coordinate with the Alliance and Johnny Marcone to be part of things because of a supernatural group called the Fomor. The Fomor. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Fomor. But they are a mixed clan of supernatural forces that have long been considered outcasts in the supernatural world, especially as compared to like the Summer Court of the Fae and the Winter Court and the White Council of Wizards. Ones who've been more powerful and better known, and all the vampire courts. Well, they are a known entity, but they keep a low profile. They are signatories on the Unseelie Accords. But when the Red Court vampires were wiped out by Harry Dresden, it left a power vacuum that the Fomor stepped into. So suddenly, over the last 6 months, they have become players, taking everybody by surprise, catching the rest of the supernatural world off guard. And they are wreaking havoc on the world. They are doing things and killing people, and they seem to have some motives that no one's entirely figured out, but they have definitely made a power play. Here in Chicago is where the most effective pushback so far has taken place, mostly because of Harry's crew. So, after all of that, Harry decides, okay, it's time to make contact. So he gets Mortimer, says, okay, ring the doorbell. And he gets welcomed in. He's a known entity. And he says, I'm here on behalf of Harry Dresden. Now, he's instantly dismissed as a liar, especially by Murphy, because he talks to ghosts, maybe, and she refuses to accept that Harry Dresden is dead. There was never a body found. He could be being held captive somewhere. He could be off on another mission. He could be simply hiding while he recovers. All sorts of possibilities. But if Mort is here because he's heard from Harry's spirit, that would mean Harry's dead. She doesn't want to believe that. So Harry has got to break past that. He starts dropping some information for Mortimer to repeat to her that only he and she would know. Things they experienced together where nobody else was around. And some of it's very shocking. She starts going pale in the face. She's like, how can you know this? And so she's being swayed. Others are seeing her being swayed. And are like, is Harry really dead? Is he really here right now? But what really tips them over to going, whoa, is a cat. Mr. Harry's cat has been living with Murphy now. Mr. comes tearing into the room right over to Harry and starts rubbing up against his legs. Okay, apparently cats can see and interact with the spirit world. And when they all see Mr. come running in and then slam up against nothing, there's nothing there, but the cat is clearly rubbing up against something that's nothing. They're like, oh, crap. It might be Harry. So at this point, they're convinced by Mort. Okay, either Harry's here or something that has convinced you it is Harry is here. But how can we be sure which it is? Well, for that, they use Molly. because the ragged lady, Molly, arrives and they ask her to use her wizard sight. Now, remember, wizard sight, that's an ability all wizards have where they can look and see things as they truly are. But once they do, it's burned into their brains. They can never erase it. It caused Harry a lot of trouble in the previous couple books ago when he saw the Nagloshi, that skinwalker that was so evil. So wizards use it trepidatiously. So she's a little hesitant to do this, but she agrees to try. But she tells everybody else, I want everybody else out. I will just do this here. So when everybody scrams, except Harry and Mortimer, she opens up her sight. And she can freaking see Harry Dresden right in front of her. And she can hear him. It does more than sight. It opens up all her senses. So she can actually interact. And then she's like, okay, I see you, but is it really you? And he makes some Star Trek corny reference. And she's like, plops down. It is him. Because only Harry would do that. All right. So that's point 3. Harry's bona fides are established. His crew knows he's back. Sorta. Because apparently he's a ghost. Before that can progress much further, there's a drive-by shooting on Murphy's place. Holy cow. Out of nowhere, car goes blazing by and the bullets come blazing through. Everybody dives for cover, even Harry. Sir Stu is going, really? Because bullets would go right through his spirit. Harry, come on. But then Stu and Harry go out after these shooters. Now, they can't do anything about the people, but Stu is always teaching things to Harry. He says, yeah, we can't, but they've got a moving vehicle, which is a machine with moving parts, and those things don't like spirits. So literally, they just start reaching into different engine parts. I mean, they reach into the airbag and poof, it goes off. They break the car, basically, and they're done. They can't go anywhere now. Now they're ways out there, blocks and blocks away by the time this happens. But they got them done. Now what? Well, Stu's going to return back to Mortimer. He doesn't want to leave him unprotected. Harry's like, I'm going to follow these guys. I want to know what this was about. Was this random? Were they after someone? Was someone trying to kill Karen Murphy? I want to know. Okay, Stu says, but remember, don't get caught outside when the sun comes up. I mean, you've got some time, but keep an eye on the time. So Harry does. He follows the kids, and as they're moving along, and I say kids, teenagers, preteens, they're not very old. They're not adults. The one that kind of seems to be leading is a boy named Fitz. And even though he's leading, it becomes obvious they're not, like, he's not the big boss. They're here. What they just did was on orders given to them by someone else, the bigger boss. So we got to find, he wants to follow so we can find out who that is. What's really going on? So he's following them as they're walking now because there's no car. And Harry discovers along the way here that Fitz can hear him. Apparently, Fitz must have some magical talent. So he can sense that Harry's there. And when Harry speaks out loud, Fitz picks up on it. He doesn't always react, but he reacted enough times that Harry figured this out. Arriving at the hideout, we discover Baldy, a bald man with some minor magical abilities, apparently, and that he's used his magic to bring a whole bunch of young kids under his sway. And he scared them into respecting his authority. Harry can tell this is not a wizard. He doesn't have big talent, but he has a few significant things that he can do, and it's enough to mess someone up. So they're afraid of him, and they've become his petty crime ring. So it's kind of like an Oliver Twist thing. He's Fagin, and he's running this group. The guy is not happy when he learns the report from Fitz that they failed to take out the people at that house. They just had to do the shooting, and then they drove away. They didn't see anything. Even more of the issue, though, is not that, we didn't see that we killed 5 people or whatever. It's that once the car crashed and they couldn't drive anymore, Fitz had them hide the guns in a snowbank because they were walking all the way back and he didn't want them caught with these illegal guns. Well, Baldy's like, those were my guns. How dare you not bring them back? And therefore, he accuses Fitz of failing. You're a failure and no food for you. Serves up dinner for everybody else and will not let Fitz eat. And belittles Fitz in front of everyone else. Fitz is angry. Fitz wants to strike back. Harry whispers in his ear, this is not the time. This is not the time. And he gets on Fitz's side enough to get him talked down. He won't strike out because he's like, Baldy wants you to. This is when he'd use you as a lesson even more. So just lie low. Give me some time to figure out a way to help you. Because, of course, Harry's got all his other problems. He's got to find his own murderer. He's got to figure this stuff out. But he's going to take time to help somebody else in need because Harry helps the weak. So all this stuff meeting Fitz and his group, that was 4. Now we move to point 5. Harry realizes time has gotten away from him because he pokes his head out of this hideout and the sun is about to rise. He's like, I may only have seconds. Where can I get to? Traveling as a ghost, because he learned from Stu, you don't walk or run. I mean, you can like Nightcrawler, zip, go long. And basically, he's figured out he can go anywhere he can see. Just he can instantly teleport as a ghost. But where could he teleport fast enough to from where he is right now in Chicago that he can get out of sight within seconds? He happens to realize he's near Graceland, the cemetery where since way back in book 3, Harry's had a tombstone and a grave plot dug and waiting for his coffin. So he zips on over there as fast as he can and literally finds, yes, his grave is still sitting open, and he slips down into it as the sun rises. Just dodges it. And he's fine. He doesn't disappear, which is what will happen to a ghost if it's caught in the sunshine. That's it. Game's over. No more ghost. Nothingness. Oblivion. He has dodged that. So now he's just stuck in his grave. Can't talk to anyone. Can't go see anyone. Nobody knows he's here. So he's just stuck sitting. And as he does that, he's like, this isn't so bad. And it makes me remember the saying, peaceful as the grave. And he just rests and even for a moment closes his eyes. And then next thing he knows, wow, it's dusk. The sun has gone down just like that. Nice decision, Jim Butcher. Let's just skip over all the boring parts. So he is kind of brought to alertness by a voice. There's a little girl talking to him. It's a spirit, a ghost. And she says, and do you recognize me? I'm kind of famous. And sure enough, she is famous. She's the most famous ghost in this cemetery, Inez. Chit-chats with her a little bit. She calls him a newborn. Because, yeah, you're like new to this. Your old life's gone. This is what you are now. And yeah, you got a lot to learn. You're kind of green. He also ends up talking to a different spirit who is in this cemetery, Eternal Silence. And some of the things it starts to say to him come through him like a big, booming resonance thing, so much that it hurts. Now, nothing really hurts Harry because he's a spirit, but he remembers what pain's like. So sometimes things that are painful, he does perceive as painful, even though he's just a ghost. And listening to Eternal Silence, ironic name, is so loud that it's painful. So he actually shifts him to, okay, let's have a conversation where I just ask you some questions. And if the answer is yes, say nothing. And if it's no, just like twitch a little. And he gets some information out of him in that way. And one of the things that he learns is that, well, just some clues that are going to point him on the direction his investigation is going to take. Eternal Silence can't tell him anything specific to help him solve the murder, but he does give him some thought prompts. Also, here in the cemetery, then he discovers that cemeteries have a job. It's more than just a place to put the bodies. A cemetery's border, its walls and gates, actually keeps the spirits in. They can't leave. Yet, with it being dusk now, sundown, he looks at the front gates and he sees them open. And he sees wraiths leaving the cemetery. And he's like, I know where the wraiths are coming from. And ghosts can't open gates. So it gives him evidence that somebody who's alive is intentionally opening the gates to let the wraiths out. So, free to move about again, with that information, he rushes back to Morty's house, only to find it on fire. This is point 6. Fire crews are around it, just keeping everything else from burning, because the house is a loss. It is burning down. So a whole bunch of spirits standing around, practically singing Kumbaya and roasting marshmallows. They're just all staring at this fire. And then he finds Sir Stu. Sir Stu's ghost is in the backyard, and it's like half gone. It's in the midst of what was clearly a ring of fire that was set around him. Ghosts, it turns out, can be burned by fire. Harry knew this, actually. The supernatural is greatly affected by fire. That's one of the reasons fire magic has been much of his go-to. It impacts so much that's out there, including spirits. Stu has been just trying to hang on until Harry showed up, because he trusted he would eventually, as soon as he could. Harry learns Mort has been abducted. There was a massive attack just as the sun went down. They weren't ready for it. They couldn't stop it. And Stu was caught off guard here. The Gray Ghost was behind it. Mort was taken at his orders. Living men that the Gray Ghost was commanding. Okay, that's next level. You've got a ghost commanding the living. Stu says, you've got to rescue Mort. And not just for me, not just because I've failed. All those spirits you see, those are all spirits that Mort, over the years, has brought into the house as part of stopping them from doing harm. These are killers. These are spirits that were actually harming people. And if they are released now, if they just go back to their ways, Chicago will have a bloodbath on its hands. We need Mort back to keep the spirits under control. But Stu's not going to be able to do it. He is slipping away. Too much of his body's gone, meaning too many of his memories are gone. He's going to fade now into wraith status, basically, with whatever's left of him. One last thing he does before that happens is he gives Harry his gun. Now, his gun is spirit. It's a part of him. So by giving it away, he's actually losing even more of himself. He's letting go of those memories, and they become Harry's. And he's willing to do it because he's got nothing else to hang on to. He's going to shift away to oblivion anyways. So now, Harry's got a gun, but it's a spirit gun. He has no real clue how he'll shoot it yet. He's going to have to figure that out. Stu had no time to really teach him much. But somehow we've got to save Mortimer. So that was point 6. Let's move to point 7. Before Harry can try to figure anything out, he's attacked right here by a couple of Lamors who were left behind, literally as a trap for Harry Dresden. They say she was right. Look, here he is. So the gray ghost is referred to as a she, we can infer here. So it is a female. She expected Harry to show up and left these to deal with him. So bad, powerful, nasty spirits are now attacking Harry. Harry is gonna fight and do what he can, but he doesn't know how to use the gun. He doesn't have any magic. He's in trouble. And then Butters shows up. Butters. Waldo Butters, part of Harry's crew. And he can see Harry. He actually is doing something with sciencey stuff, and he detects, there you are. And he's got Bob with him. Real Bob. You know, our friendly Bob. And he sicks Bob on these lemurs, and Bob kind of handles them without much difficulty. Good old Bob. So we learn Butters is now the custodian of Bob, because Bob was one more thing of Harry's that fell to Murphy when Harry was gone, and Murphy decided Butters could be a good match and make use of Bob for the good of Chicago and the things they're trying to do. Bob tells Harry, yeah, Butters is doing a great job with me. I mean, you know he's not a wizard, but the dude's smart. And he gets magical theory, even if he can't do magic. So he's figuring out all sorts of things. This is how we were able to come find you. Also, because he is smart, he's able to take a radio that he's wired up to catch the spirit signal. Basically, he allows Harry to be able to talk to him through a radio. That's something we saw hinted at a previous book, and it's out there in the supernatural world. People believe spirits can talk through radios. So here Jim Butcher puts it in the story. And now they actually can have a conversation with Harry's voice coming out of the radio. All right, point 8. Butters is going to take Harry over to the headquarters of the Alliance, this gathering that resists the Fomor in Chicago. Because it's not Murphy's house. That was just an off-the-books meeting time. The actual headquarters, turns out, is where Harry's apartment used to be. It burned down and changes. Well, Johnny Marcone bought the property, and he built a freaking fortress. It's basically a castle on the plot. And that building has been called the Brighter Future Society, and is the headquarters for a whole bunch of people who are trying to work to protect Chicago. So there's Paranetters that'll come and go here. The Venatori, who also help the wizards in some ways, come and go. Soldiers of Valhalla are guarding the place, and they are barracked here. These are people who are on Marcone's payroll. Probably work for Odin, like Guard does. So they're all here in this place on Harry's old stomping ground. Now that's a bummer, but it is what it is. As they are coming to this place, Harry and Butters are having some conversation, and we're getting some info dump here. And one of the things we learn is that there have been people turning up dead all over the city, and that many believe this ragged lady, who we know as Molly Carpenter, is the one doing it. And there's even evidence to suggest she might be doing it, which enhances Harry's concern that, yeah, maybe Chichen Itza has messed her up worse than perhaps anyone realizes. If she's become a serial killer, that's a problem. We also learn Blue Bob. That's probably part of Bob. This harkens back to Deadbeat, where Bob, it came out, had been once the spirit of intellect and property of Kemmler, the necromancer. And when he worked for Kemmler, he was evil. Now, he passed away from Kemmler to Justin, the former master of Harry, and from Justin, he came into Harry's possession, and he's good Bob. He's nice Bob. But when Bob asked him back in Deadbeat to tap into that past knowledge, Bob turned blue and went all evil and started harming Harry. And Harry forced him to never touch that knowledge again, that evil part. Never wanted to see it again, get rid of it. And so Bob did. He got rid of it. He literally separated that part of his intellect from himself and got rid of it. So Blue Bob might be that part that Bob separated from himself. And he's like, "Are you kidding me?" This is Harry's reaction. "You might have done this." And he's like, "Well, really, you kind of did this then, Harry." Yeah. Great. So Blue Bob, we might see more of him. As they enter this fortress now, they find Murphy. She's here actually sparring with some of these soldiers, and Harry gets to watch some of this as a spirit, And we're just reminded, basically, again, how badass Karen Murphy is. She's holding her own against these professional soldiers, big, stereotypical buff guys. She's also getting a little beat up, but she can take it. Okay, then she and Harry, when that sparring's done, they do talk through the radio. They communicate about, okay, what did you find? You had taken off from the shooting yesterday. And he explains what he came upon and Fitz and those boys and that they're really good kids. It's this guy who's leading them that's out of control that needs to be dealt with. And she's like, "Really? Good kids? Is that your professional opinion?" He's like, "Yes." "Okay, so those good kids shot Abby, our Paranetter. She's in the hospital and may not pull through. Oh, and there was a guy who lived behind me that was killed in his bed by one of the bullets that passed through the house. Those kids are murderers and need to be dealt with." And Harry's like, "No, no, they're victims here. And you can't be sending the police in on something like that because the guy who's controlling them has magical abilities. He would make it miserable if they tried. Let me try to work it out." She's not happy about this. And they argue. But eventually, okay, they move on to talk about other things that they've got to deal with and do. And then Butters and Murphy go off to take care of some things that they're going to try to plan and work on because, they've got to find out this more about Mort and this great ghost and all that stuff. That's the big thing. So they're going to work on stuff for that. And they'll leave this Fitz thing for now. Fine. When they're gone, Harry's just left here to himself, and he comes to realize, okay, she overreacted to that Fitz stuff. No, I understand. Okay, she got shot at, her house got shot up, people got hurt, and she's mad. But she blew up bigger as a cover because before that, we're trying to work on this bigger case, and they also know why I'm here to try. I got to try to solve the mystery of my murder. She didn't want to talk about something related to that. That's what this is. And it dawns on him that as we think about who might have murdered him, there's one person that we all know that comes to mind. Someone who had said if they ever had to kill Harry, they'd do it with a high-powered rifle from a distance and he'd never see it coming. Kincaid, the hired assassin, the bodyguard for Ivy, the archive. This is exactly how he had said he'd kill Harry. And Kincaid and Murphy had had a fling for a while. They'd been on good terms, very, very friendly. Why would she not bring up Kincaid as a possible suspect? He's like, there's something there, and I don't think she wanted me to think of him. Okay, that wraps up point 8. We move on to point 9. Remember, of 13 points. Point 9. Harry spends time now, after he's come up with the Kincaid thing. He's like, okay, fine. I can't do anything else about that right now. But what I do need to figure out is how can I use magic? Because the gray ghost is using magic. There has to be a way. Okay, if I'm going to shoot this gun, that uses memory to power it, to become its bullets. Can memories power magic? So Harry spends some time thinking of a very powerful memory. And then he tries to craft that into the power to do a spell. And it works. He discovers he can use his memories. Now it's going to use them up. It's not an unlimited fuel, but he's not here for an unlimited time. So he's good with that. And he's going to use memories to do spells. All right, this is an important step. And what he does for this first spell is he decides to try to find Molly. He's got these concerns about Molly, the ragged lady, the serial killer. So he does a tracking spell and he follows the spell and he finds Molly. But what he finds Molly doing is training. She's training in magic, training in her abilities. And who's training her? His fairy godmother, Leanne, and she's there working with Molly. And they're actually having a conversation as Harry comes upon them, where she explains she's doing this out of obligation to Harry because he agreed to be the Winter Knight. That obligates the Winter Court to care for Harry's responsibilities. She's Harry's apprentice. Therefore, she has partly become the Winter Court's responsibility and obligation. So Harry is not around to train her. She has taken up that training. Doesn't matter. Apparently, he's dead. That does not end the obligation. Well, this leads to a whole bunch of action that Harry observes. And then conversation because he discovers, oh, Leah can see me. She totally knows I'm here. He even realizes, okay, some of these things you were saying to Molly, you were saying specifically because you knew I was listening. You dog. He also learns through this that Molly and Leah, as part of the training, have been tag teaming as the Ragged Lady. So it hasn't always been Molly who's out there terrorizing the neighborhoods. But they're not terrorizing the neighborhoods. They're specifically fighting back against turtlenecks. And Harry gets to see some of them in a demonstration with Molly, and he even gets involved with it for a little bit. Turtlenecks are humans that have been transformed magically by the Fomar. So they're army for Fomar. And Leah and Molly have been actively resisting them. Not that Leah cares too much. Molly does, and Leah's helping as part of her mentorship. So they have some more conversation about this and about what all they've been doing. And at the end of the conversation, Molly leaves. But Harry is left with this understanding that much of the craziness that's been seen in this Ragged Lady is actually intentional. She's feigning this. She hasn't lost it completely. She's on a mission, and this is how she has best been able to do her part to protect Chicago. She says, I'm not you, Harry. I don't have the abilities that you have, but I have things I can do, and I'm using what I can do. But he does know she is angry with him. She's angry over what happened 6 months ago still, and she's deeply troubled by it. So she might be feigning a lot of this, but there's an impact. She has been scarred. Okay, that takes us to 10. Harry is going to reconnect with Fitz now and get him on a path to resolving his troubles and dealing with Baldy for good. A part of that is he gets him connected with Nick Christian. Now, Nick is a private investigator that Harry actually worked for, mentored under, when he first got into the PI gig here in Chicago. And you can learn more about Nick Christian in one of the short stories that are part of the Dresden Files, which I will not talk about today, but I might get to some other day. After having him connected with Nick, he's going to move him on to someone else. But he's going to leave him with Nick for a while first. I have to... Nope. Sorry. My notes out of order. After he's done with Nick, he's going to take him somewhere else where he believes he'll be safe. He's introducing him to Father Forthill. He's not going to let him go back to that place. He's going to try to figure out a way to help Fitz get his friends away from that bad guy. In the meantime, he sets him up for shelter at the Church of St. Mary's in Father Forthill's care. Now, figuring that's managed for now, he's got to get back to the business. This is point 11 of tracking down where Mortimer is. If we're going to save Mort, we got to know where he is. Well, he does manage to find him in a warehouse and find that he is being tortured by the gray ghost. He literally finds Mort dangling upside down over a pit of mad, insane wraiths. Now, anybody else in there is just going to see an empty pit. Mort is an ectomancer. He sees spirits, he hears spirits, he can interact with spirits, and the gray ghost keeps dipping him down into the pit. He's got goons doing it for him. People who've been somehow subverted to his cause. And they lower him in, and he is, psychically basically being damaged. And then he raises him back up. And he's trying to break Mortimer down for a very specific reason. Why? Harry comes to understand in watching and listening what's going on. And basically, he discovers the gray ghost is the corpse taker, a very specific necromancer we met in Deadbeat that he thought had been killed. The corpse taker is the one who actually had jumped into Anastasio Lucio's body, the head of the warders. And while in that body, Harry killed that body. Because he knew what had happened. He realized it. So he killed Lucio's body, thus killing Corpse Taker. Lucio survives because she was in the body Corpse Taker had jumped from. This is an ability, a necromantic ability Corpse Taker has, to jump from body to body. Apparently, when the body was killed, Corpse Taker sort of died. Corpse Taker's a ghost, just like Harry is right now. But apparently was too strong in necromantic abilities, refused to move on, hung out as a ghost, and is torturing Mortimer to get him to break down and let her in. We said earlier, a spirit can't enter a body and possess it unless invited in. She's trying to break him down enough to open the door. That will end the torture. Just let me in. Okay, that's bad. Harry's got to find a way to get Mort away here, because if she gets into that body, then she can jump to other bodies. She will be... It was so hard to get her the first time. We don't want that set loose again. Okay, also while he's overseeing this and seeing what's going on, we get a little note here that Blue Bob is still actively around, helping her, and comes in with a message that there's a Fomor messenger coming by and wants to talk. It's not real important. Really, the only important thing that we see there is that the Grey Ghost and the Fomor might be interacting, but they're not necessarily on the same page. They're not on the same team. So I guess that's good. All right. Let's move on to number 12. Everything in the story up to this point has been prelude to the big finish, as usual for a Dresden Files book. Now we get two big finishes. First, Harry had left Fitz with Father Forthill. Well, it turns out Forthill decided, after listening to Fitz's story, that he was going to go to Baldy and try to get this man to let the children go. Baldy, we've come to know, really is named Aristides. He goes to Aristides, demands their release, stop using them as criminals, be a better man. Well, of course, it doesn't work. No one's seen Father Fordhill since. Fitz is going out of his mind. He's probably dead. He will have done horrible things. So Harry sets up a plan to try to go rescue Fordhill. He gets Daniel Carpenter and Waldo Butters in gray robes to pose as warders. And with Fitz as their captive, they go to meet with this sorcerer who is apparently, you know, apprenticing this young Fitz, and he's done some wrong things, and we're here to investigate what's going on. Now, Aristides does meet with them. He's familiar with the White Council. He knows warders. He's walking gently here at first, and while that's going on at the front door, Spirit Dresden goes right inside to see where's Father Fordhill. What's happened? And he finds Fordhill. He is in bad shape. He's unconscious. He's been beaten badly. Not only that, the stinking angel of death is hanging out, ready to take Fordhill home. Harry's like, no, you can't have him. She's just like, this is what I do. He's done his role well with life. There is a great reward waiting for him. It's like, no, just don't take him. Let me try to fix this first. Goes back out to where the others are, just as there's a misstep in what they're saying. The disguise falls apart. Aristides goes off on them with his magical abilities. Daniel Carpenter gets beat pretty bad. Magically, Aristides is stabbing him, but he's got armor on underneath. I mean, he's doing okay, but he takes some dings. They manage to, I think it's break Aristides' leg. So take him down that way. Harry helping as he can, which is mostly go team. Then Butters falls victim to, he's a doctor, he cares for people, even though, coroner. Because Aristides is like, oh, my leg. Okay, Butters is going to help him. Okay, hold still. Let me fix this. Aristides is just setting him up and uses his magic and knocks him out. Now Harry's like, what now? What do I do? He can't really help, except he goes and finds Fitz. Because when things went off the rails, Fitz scrammed. He's terrified of what's going to happen to him. He has seen Aristides kill a kid that defied him before. So he's terrified. This is going to be his. Well, Harry convinces him, this is your time. There are other kids here who need you to be the one to step up. We can still salvage this. Fitz goes back, and he manages to basically stand up to Aristides and get the other kids to all do so as well. Now, it helps that he's got a broken leg, so he can't be as physically at them, and his magic has limits. And when they are no longer afraid of him, honestly, his power over them crumbles. And with it crumbling, Fitz gets on the phone and calls the police. So police show up, paramedics show up. Father Fordhill is taken to the hospital. He's gonna be okay. Daniel is picked up by his dad. He's a bit beat up, so he's out of the rest of this book, but he'll be fine. Butters, he's all right. He shakes off the coke-cock that he got, and he's got his sidekick, Bob. They're ready to go with Harry for the final part of this story. So let's get to number 13, which is going to be a little long compared to the others because I had to squeeze a lot in to finish this into 13. This is the final 30% of the story. Harry gathers the spirits that Mort had previously gathered at his house and gets them to come with him. They've discovered there is an opening to the Never Never inside the warehouse where Corpse Taker is. So if they can get into the Never Never, they should be able to make it to that opening, and Harry and these spirits surprise attack, coming bursting in. Of course, they can't get into the Never Never. Harry doesn't have that much ability. So he gets Molly to come and open up a way into the Never Never. Then Molly, she's not coming with. She's got a different mission. She and others of Harry's team are going to be waiting and ready to break in once Harry and his ghosts get through and inside and make a distraction. That's the basic plan. Getting through the Never Never is never easy, though. And in this spirit realm Never Never, it's crazy. It's like they're storming the beaches of Normandy. I mean, there's all sorts of powers and battles that they have to try to make it through. And as they're approaching where they believe is the entrance into the warehouse out of the Never Never, they find Blue Bob, actually the primary defender of this. He will not let them through, and they can't take him. He's too much. And then Real Bob shows up. Here I come to save the day. And Bob and Blue Bob go scullo scullo v scullo, mano a mano, scullo a man, scullo a scullo. I don't know. You get what I'm saying? They duel. Harry and they take off. And they make it out. Bob will eventually overcome Blue Bob. But he just keeps them busy enough that Harry and them are able to get out. And yes, surprise attack. They show up in the warehouse and they go off on the wraiths and the people that are there. And it seems to work for a while. They seem to be getting the upper hand. They do free Morty, but he's kind of like, what have you done, Harry? And why? Well, Corpse Taker starts absorbing the abilities, the essences of all these other ghosts. The Mad Wraiths, the ones Harry brought. And Mort says she's getting so powerful, she can start manifesting as a ghost. She's going to be able to start physically appearing in the world. And if she can do that, then she can use her real magic. She can't do it while she's in a ghost form, but if she can manifest, she can tap into her abilities, and then she'd be able to jump into someone else's body and it's game over. Now, all during this battle, of course, we were supposed to be having another battle happening in the building, and Molly and Butters and Murphy, they should be breaking in to help with this. That's not happened. Instead, it's just been all the spirits and Corpse Taker, and now Corpse Taker has run off. Harry has managed to save Mort, but there's no Corpse Taker anymore. So they go running after where Corpse Taker went out, see if they can catch her. What they find is everybody unconscious, except Butters, who's like, oh, thank goodness, Harry, you're here now. And there's no Molly. But everybody else, Murphy, the alphas, they're all unconscious on the ground here. Butters shares, I was outside on lookout. I came in. This is what I found. Harry starts looking around. What could have happened? And then he feels a gun at the back of his head. Now, how does he feel a gun? Well, in the fighting back there to free Mort, Harry took inspiration from what Corpse Taker did and used magic to manifest. Harry has made himself physically present. Even though he's still a spirit, he now, through a great use of magic, pouring some powerful memories into it, he has made himself physical. So he's here. He needed it to fight off one of the last guys he had to overcome to free Mort. But now, is it backfiring? He has a gun poking in the back of his head. And it's Butters laughing to himself. No one ever doubts the doctor. Corpse Taker has taken over Butters and pulls the trigger. It's okay. Harry simply releases his magical spell and goes spirit again. You can't kill me, haha. But he doesn't have enough juju to do that again. Now he's just a spirit. And here's Corpse Taker in Butters with all these unconscious friends and allies, and he can't do a thing. He's helpless, and he's terrified of what's about to happen. He has failed. And then Molly steps out from behind the veil she was hiding herself behind and attacks Corpse Taker with a soul gaze. Okay, game on. This is all a meeting of the minds now, a battle on the mindscape. And Molly first got herself in trouble because she's a mental wizard. She's got abilities here. So does Corpse Taker, unfortunately. Harry, what can he do? Well, he is able spiritually to get in to see what they're doing. He can't help, but he can see this mental mindscape Molly has created. And she's fighting off the hordes of attackers that the Corpse Taker is bringing. It looks like a losing cause, but she is doing a great job with all sorts of defenses and challenges and trying to see if she can wear Corpse Taker down. It doesn't look like it's going well. But what we get to over the course of a very long chapter is finally Harry is able to get a memory from Molly. He's able to discover what's been eating at her, what she brought back with her from Chichen Itza that's changed her, that's hurt her. And we get the reveal of what really happened in changes that we never were told. Okay, here's the deal. Harry, back in changes. He's paralyzed from the fall off the ladder when his apartment was burning down. He's feeling helpless. He can't do anything to help his friends. He literally has the thought, and it's all my fault. And then he decides the only thing he can do is accept Queen Mab's invitation to be the Winter Knight, because that power will heal him magically, and then he will have the power to do what he needs to do to save his daughter Maggie from the Red Court vampires. But he's terrified of what he believes will happen, that he'll turn into like Lloyd Slate, the previous Winter Knight, who was a very bad man, incessantly evil. And he believes that that winter mantle, the winter court, the darkness, it ate away at him. And Harry does not want that to happen to himself and him to become a monster of the winter court. He thinks of how powerful he is as a wizard, and if that all turned to darkness, to evil, he couldn't let that happen. That's one of the big reasons he's consistently said, "No way, I won't be your Winter Knight." So he makes an arrangement before he contacts Queen Mab. He has Molly, just Molly, with him, and says, "Molly, get me the phone." And he calls Kincaid. And Harry puts a hit on himself. He says, "Here's the deal. I'm going to go off and do something very, very bad. I may not live through it. But if I do, and I'm back, I want you to take me out." And he pays him in advance to kill him. Then he says, "Now, Molly, I need you to erase this from my memory." So he gives her explicit instruction to use the magic to erase something from his mind. Now, she did that to him. That's breaking the laws of magic. But if he asks her to, that's a loophole. She can do that. She didn't break a law of magic. But she has this knowledge. She knows what really happened. She can't erase it from her own brain. And she's been carrying this, knowing she empowered Harry's basic suicide. Ugh, what a weight. When Harry learns this, the chapter ends, and he's not there anymore. He doesn't get to see how the battle ends. He knows nothing. Suddenly, he's in a totally different place. He's back in between, and he's with the Archangel Uriel, who has been his friend before. That's where he got the soul fire abilities and such. Uriel is the one who's in charge of this in-between place. Captain Murphy works for Uriel. Uriel is the one that arranged for Harry to have the chance to go back and try to solve the murder and figure out the truth. And since he succeeded, now good job. You have helped avoid bad things that could have happened to your people, and you now have an option, Harry. He tells him, your reward. You can stay here and work for me. You can be part of my crew here. Or you can choose freely still to move on to whatever comes after. I can't tell you what comes after for you. Judgment, eternity, forever, something like that. Those kind of words, are involved, but you won't know where you're headed until you go through the judgment. So you can take that chance. You can move on to what's next for you, or you can stay here and work for me. Harry is like, well, since you're giving me that choice, I'd like to ask one thing before I make my decision. I'd like to see what really happened to everybody else after I was gone. And I need to. I'm looking at my notes. I'm seeing something I missed here. Before he makes that decision, before Uriel gives him the actual choice, he does explain why all this was allowed in the first place. So I've got to mention that. And it's simply that a fallen angel had cheated. When Harry was at that point that he made that decision to accept the Winter Mantle and then have Kincaid preset to kill him, he was in a state at that point susceptible to despair because one of the fallen angels, those fallen Denarians, was there, unseen, and whispered words into his ear. When he had that thought, and it's all my fault, that wasn't his own thought. That was whispered to him. That set him off on that route of there's no hope. I have to do something desperate. That's cheating. Angels aren't allowed to interfere in the lives of mortals in that way. Since that was done to him, he was given this chance to try to fix things. He didn't just die and go on. Fallen Angel cheated like that because they wanted Harry off the board. That's maybe something else we'll learn about later. The Denarians wanted him gone. I mean, he's certainly been a thorn in their flesh, but maybe there's more to that. But so now again, okay, so they cheated, they did things, you've intervened now because you could, because they cheated. So intervene one more time. Let me see what's out there. What happens? And so, okay, he jumps around to a few different things and he gets to see, Molly won. She found the strength after basically being freed from that secret. She was able to draw now on reserves and knowing Harry was okay in a sense. She was able to win. She also had help. Mortimer, who Harry had saved. Mort is able to jump into the battle as well on the outside of things, not in her head. And between the two of them, they're able to take out Corpse Taker. Yes. Is that for good? We'll see. He gets to peek in on the lives of some of the others that he loves. And the overall sense he gets is that they're all going to be okay. And he also gets to do the thing he didn't get time to explore while he was a ghost. And that is he gets to see where his daughter Maggie is. Turns out she's been adopted by the Carpenters and she's well loved. And she has a protector. Mouse is living there with her. Mouse is, that big old temple dog. Mouse is loving on her all the time. And when Harry's visiting, Mouse can actually see Harry. So it's like, ah, good boy. He's like, keep it up. So with all that settled, Harry decides to go to what's next. And the book ends with Harry waking up in some sort of hell. Except it's not hell. It's just misery because he's like hooked up to some life support, magical sort of thing. His body has been kept alive by Demon Reach, the spirit of his island, in coordination with Queen Mab, who does not want her winter knight getting out of his obligation. They have spent the last 6 months keeping his body alive. She's emaciated. She has poured herself into this task. And the IVs and stuff, they're all like parts of Demon Reach, this creature. And they have seen that his body had what it needed. They also mention they were helped along by the parasite, keeping his blood flowing. The parasite? This is the first we've heard anything about a parasite. We're not going to talk any more about a parasite, but spoiler alert, there's more to come about a parasite. But okay, Harry was shot. He should have been dead. His spirit was gone. They kept his body alive. So when his spirit gets to move on, it goes back to the body that's still alive waiting for him. Whoa. And Harry's like, oh, dang it, all this work I did, and I'm not out of Winter Night after all, and I'm going to turn into this monster I didn't want to do. And then he hears words whispered in his ear. Lies. Mab cannot change who you are. It's Uriel balancing the scale. 7 words whispered into his ear, the same number of words the fallen angel had whispered in to set him on this path. And what Uriel is saying is, what you thought would happen as Winter Night is not true. Mab might want you to think she's going to turn you into this evil Winter Night. Nope. She can make you be the Winter Night because you've entered a bargain. But she can't change who you are. She doesn't have that kind of power. You got this, Harry. That gives him hope. So he may have to work for Mab, but he tells her, okay, I'll be your Winter Night, but you can't force me to become a monster. Challenge accepted. This will be an interesting tug of forces between the two of them moving forward. But more to that in our next book. And trust me, there's a lot of that in our next book. All right, some final thoughts to wrap up. We mentioned how spirits derive their strength and power from memories. That's what we learned in this book. Harry learns that. And as part of that, there's parts of the book where Harry is exploring past memories that he's then going to use to do stuff. But some of those memories are significant. And one of them we experience is his encounter with He Who Walks Behind, the outsider that we've learned about before, that he originally had believed was a demon that his mentor had sent after him to kill him. And instead it was something else. Well, we get to see the actual experience. Yeah, this creature was very powerful and Harry shouldn't have been able to kill him, but we see how he does. So, interesting. More to come on the Outsiders. We also see Harry has some interesting interactions with his fairy godmother in this book. It is fascinating to see Leanne and how she lives the life and the rules of the Fae. I find you often just can't tell, is she a good witch or a bad witch? And I think primarily that's due to the mortal rules and understandings of good and bad just don't apply to the Fae. So she's not good or bad. She's just Fae. It's something different. And at one point in this book, Harry spends time in Bob's skull. It's where he goes to be safe for a period of time. And we get to see Bob in a whole new way. This was a delightful little part of the book where you see Bob's bachelor's pad, this psychic or spiritual domain that Bob has created. And Bob is a person inside this thing. It's kind of a genie in the bottle type of experience. And it was delightful. But it also unpacked for us that there's more to Bob than meets the eye. All right. That's what I've got for this one. So I want to again thank you for being here, invite you to check out the show notes and come and interact with me, my son. If it's on Discord, you can interact with all of our other fans as well. And there is a link for Patreon here too. If you want, we have people who support us financially a little bit each month, and they get some extra benefits by doing that. We would welcome your Patreon support at any time. Thank you for being here, and let me run my outro. And here it comes. So again, illustrating for you ways that you can find us, interact with us. Don't forget to subscribe. And certainly, if you enjoyed this episode, just hit that like button here on YouTube. Help more people find us. YouTube uses these sorts of things. Drop a comment in the chat. Those interactions help us just get shared more broadly. And we do this for fun. It's more fun when more people see it. Thank you again. Appreciate your time here today. And we'll talk to you next time.